on behalf of Wednesdays for Water, an initiative of the W4W Foundation, a think tank which is built around as a citizens collective. We invite you to the second season of it. And it's one more session now for us, but for all of you, it's second year start. And we start with a very interesting session on wells of India, which is focused around the discussions of wells that are integral part of India's water management. We have with us Vishwanath Shrikantaya, aka Zen Rain Man, to enlighten us on the presence and the perils of wells in the country. I have been following his work for near 2 decades now, and it's a privilege to host him in our 52nd session of the Wednesdays for Water. Vishwanath is a well-known name in the field of water management and needs no introduction. However, may I invite Megha to honor him by stating a short intro and put the details in the bio and chat box. Over to you, Megha.
Vishwanath Shrikantaya, aka Zen Rain Man, is a well-known water activist and an educator based out of Bangalore. He is working in collaboration with local communities and has successfully made about more than 10,000 wells functional with help of these well diggers in the cities. He's working with the well digging community to revive and exchange aquifers through 1 million wells. He's a water conservation expert and an advisor at Environmental Trust, renowned for its tireless and pioneering efforts to find solutions to the country's freshwater crisis. He's also designed several rooftop water harvesting structures for households and industries, including his own house, which I'm eager to actually visit and see it myself. He's an active member of the Rainwater Club, and he has also been spreading information about rainwater harvesting since 1995. Along with his active supporters, he also works with the lake rejuvenation community and has been promoting the idea of integrated urban water management. So I think
Thanks, Megha. I will now invite Vishwanath to give his keynote speech as our inaugural session for the season 2. And as a ritual goes, I request him to really also enlighten us with the past, present, and the future of wells in the overall state of water management in the country, including the state of rising water crisis and where do these wells sit. More importantly, I also wish to really ask him to enlighten us with the difference between the wells because they are often used as exchanged words in many documents, and because we have youngsters also sitting through and they use our lectures. The difference between wells, tube wells, bore wells, step wells, and if there are more classification, and that will be nice. And over to you, Vishwanath, and thank you again for taking out time for us.
No, it's my pleasure, Mansee. And it's good that and thank you, Megha, for that introduction. Always a pleasure to be around people who are obsessed with water or interested in water or trying to find solutions in water, working and researching on water, and so on and so forth, right? So it's my pleasure to be here, so there's nothing out of the ordinary. What I'm trying to do today, in a brief presentation, which will last the maximum of 30 minutes, and I was discussing with Mansee that it's a human rights violation if you exceed 30 minutes for an audience, and I don't want to be culpable of that. I've tried to take you through the history of wells in general, globally, but also wells in India, what role they played, and how they have now been reimagined as part of the groundwater management and the aquifer management that India is so crucially dependent on. So I'll just take you briefly through that. And it's a set of visuals that I'll put there. This is not a technical lecture as much as a general exposition on the wells. And we could discuss more crucial details at a link that I will provide in the end. I have a Facebook group called Open Wells of India and the World. And you're welcome to become a member there and share your experiences, your questions with everybody else, right? So that's where it all begins. And it's good that we start on June 1st because this is the commencement of the monsoon. Southwest monsoon, and we eagerly look forward, hopefully, as the IMD predicts, it will be above average, and we'll do a good job of holding on to the water to last us through the whole year. So let me just start sharing the visuals. Here you go. So hopefully it's up and visible, Megha?
Visible.
Yeah, okay. So the history of wells in India, but also more globally, and what role they will play now, right? So that's what I want to begin with. A common imagination of water across the world is that of rivers and river basins. As you see in this beautiful picture developed, showing the veins and arteries of India with all the major river basins there. And such a beautiful visual, graphically visible picture. And it's very nice for us to appreciate the rivers of India. They have to be appreciated. But a lot of time we forget that the vast majority of fresh water that's available globally and even in India is actually groundwater. And groundwater comprises about 98 to 99% of fresh water that's available on the planet, right? Which is something that we need to think about. And we've also to remember that it's the southwest monsoon which brings about 75% of the total water that will be available to us as a continent over these next 4 months, June, July, August, September. We'll get all these monsoons, and this is a picture from IMD satellite today, the monsoon having arrived 3 days early to India. It's very important that we hold on to these waters. And how do we hold on to the waters? Obviously, we hold on to the waters in our forests. The glaciers hold on to them. We hold on to them as soil moisture. We hold on to them in our rivers. And most importantly, we also hold on to them through our aquifers. If we replenish our aquifers, we are able to then extend this 4 months of water for the rest of the year, for the whole 12 months, a known fact. And so this fetish of mine, if you can pardon the use of the word, is also with wells. Because what you see is the great liberator. This hole in the ground which yielded water was perhaps humankind's first effort to access water itself. Before the hole in the ground, human beings accessed water through natural means. Lakes were there, streams were there, springs were there, ponds were there, and you went and you accessed water which nature made available. But once you figured out that you could dig a hole in the ground and get into groundwater, the whole countryside was yours now to explore, if not conquer, right? You could go away from the source of a fresh water supply, dig a hole in the ground, and get water for your life, and slowly, as we will see, perhaps for your livelihood also. So the well, this hole in the ground, this artifact, which was unlined, as you see on the left, and then we decorated it by lining it with stone and bricks at later stage to make it more stable, was a human artifact of discovery, which is fascinating for me. The oldest wells, and this is what I picked up from the web, is to 10,500 years old. It predates settled agriculture. Settled agriculture is dated to about 6,200 years or 6,500 years in the Euphrates Tigris Basin or in China or in India. But the discovery of the well predates settled agriculture. So here's the hypothesis. It was the well which enabled us to cultivate other than rain-fed crops. It was then followed by dams and barrages. Perhaps wells provided the supplemental water or critical water beyond the rain-fed irrigation that we had, and therefore the cultivation of wheat, rice, millets, grass, everything became possible thanks to this discovery of groundwater. A fascinating hypothesis. Another interesting artifact is the well at Syene on a summer solstice day enabled Eratosthenes to actually calculate the circumference of the earth. He observed on a summer solstice day in Alexandria that there was no shadow in the well. And then he used a tower at Alexandria to calculate the angle of the shadow, and then walked to a place called Syene, got somebody to walk to a place called Syene where there was no shadow at that particular point of time, and helped therefore measure the circumference of the world to a very accurate extent. So here's the role that the well has played in more than providing water kind of a function. When we get to India itself, a lot of us in the water sector know that we are a groundwater civilization. This realization is dawning on us critically over the last 20 years or 25 years. Before the last 20, 25 years, groundwater did not have the agenda or was not on the radar as much as it is now, because we are the world's largest user of groundwater. We are also a very fragmented user of groundwater with 33 to perhaps 40 billion wells and bore wells, meeting 65% of our total water requirements and 85% of our drinking water needs. Currently, we're running one of the largest rural drinking water projects in the world called the Jal Jeevan Mission. And in many places, the source of the water is groundwater, though we are trying to move towards surface water as a more reliable source. But perhaps we have to look at a combination of groundwater and surface water if we are to meet the target of 55 liters per capita per day in our rural households. And perhaps that exploration will go on as we go there. And one of the interesting factors, of course, is that India uses more groundwater than USA and China combined. Hence the importance of the wells and bore wells, which are extraction structures, but also aquifers. The well, as I said, is not only a functional device, an artifact which human beings found, but it's also a great communicator. It provides water, but if we are willing to listen, it talks to us. So, for example, it tells us that summer is approaching, the water table levels fall, and therefore you have to use the resource carefully. You have to, as a human being, alter your behavior based on the natural resource availability. Or if it's been a year of plenty of rainfall, the well fills up so you can use plentiful water. This is a signal which the well provides to us. If there are two adjacent wells, the draw of water from one well will influence the other well, so it will talk to us about aquifers. And therefore, there's a common property resource. It's not an individual resource. That's the well talking to us. It talks provided we are willing to listen. It also rewards us for good behavior. If we make recharge structures like lakes and ponds nearby and allow fresh rainwater to infiltrate into the ground, the well fills up. If we dump garbage and pollutants all in the surrounding area, the aquifer gets polluted and the well signals bad behavior to us. So communication has been one of the key lessons that the well has taught us. And we've lost the communication angle, both with the deep bore well as well as with the tap, because now we do not know where the water comes from, most of us, which reservoir it comes from, how much water is there, how much are we entitled to use, and so on and so forth. So therefore, we need to go back to the culture with a scientific understanding of the aquifers and the wells to be able to understand what the biological capability of an environment or a biome is to provide us water, and therefore how to live within those beings of the water. One of the other interesting artifacts of the well was that they were generally free from fluorides and arsenic, though they were liable to contamination from sewage or bacteria, but from chemical contamination, they used to be free. So one of the largest mass poisoning occurred in Bangladesh when we went from ponds and open wells to deep bore wells without realizing the presence of arsenic. So therefore, shifts in aquifers also have meant consequences for communities which have been using water. Open wells have the lowest cost water in the sense their ability to haul water from shallow depths, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, makes it less embodied energy and in fact, no energy if you're humanly hauling it. So therefore, that's a cost factor as well as an energy and carbon emission factor, which is low with open wells. Aquifers need, however, recharge, and we need a water safety plan to prevent from pollution. That's the scientific component, therefore we understand it. So civilizationally, even when we call it an Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro, for example, which is now in current Pakistan, there were more than 700 wells there. So the city, which was of Indus Valley, named after the river, actually depended on its water on wells. Same with Harappa, same with Rakigadi, and Dholavira actually did a lot of rainwater harvesting and had some wells there. So though the rivers have been ascribed and have given name to the civilizations, perhaps the water drawl was from wells more in general, and therefore groundwater was supporting them as early as 3000 BC. And not only the Indus Valley, even in the south, Kiladi, in the Tamil Sangam literature, where current excavation is going on by the ASI, close to Madurai, you find wells there. And you find a very interesting comment that ring wells indicate an urban settlement. Right? So urbanization is indicated by the presence of wells. They don't have to go to a river or lake. On a lighter vein, you can say wells are the cause of human laziness, is what is ascribed. Apparently, this gentleman never lifted water from a well. If he lifted a bucket of water, he would have understood what getting water from a well is, and it's nothing to do with laziness. It's a lot of human effort also. And so Lothal, for example, had not only drainage, but also the shallow open well. The bricks themselves were made in a wedge form so that they would not structurally collapse. And that was the kind of intervention we did with groundwater, designing the system holistically, including the brickwork, to make sure that the stability of the well was there and it lasted a long, long time. And therefore, when you go to Sarnath, where the Buddha gave his first pravachan to his followers, Sarnath does not have a lake or a pond right now. It does not have a river nearby. People are dependent on water for drinking. And here is a well which is in Sarnath, which has water, and the water is sweet. And so are we privileged to be in touch with Gautama Siddhartha, not only through spiritual sayings and his wisdom that he left us, but also perhaps through the groundwater that he drank, and we are privileged to also drink from. Right? So if we talk about sustainable artifacts or sustainable development, here's a artifact which has lasted 2,400 years, right, in Sarnath. And the Ashokan edicts talk a lot about digging wells and planting trees. All the Ashokan edicts talk about digging wells, planting trees for travelers. So here you have it carved in stone. And that stone carving also tells us about the construction of lakes, the inscription stones spread all across India. A very interesting group in Bangalore has been doing a lot of research and documenting these inscription stones. They talk about lakes and tanks and about wells. And as you can see, some of the lakes and tanks in Bangalore are more than 1,200 years old. And so therefore, they're also connected to the wells close by. And so each temple, therefore, has a well, and you can see the pots being placed there, causing those potholders to emerge with constant use. This is a well at Konarak, right? So wells morph themselves dependent on the use. Rope marks are already left there. And there are these special type of keystone wells or key wells, which you can see in certain parts of India, mostly in the north, Bengal and Orissa, where there are also pottery line wells, and surprisingly in Sri Lanka, in Anuradhapura. So perhaps this contact between Sri Lanka and what is now Gaud at that point of time of the Magadha Empire was also reflected through the artifacts used for the construction of wells, like these keystone wells or pottery line wells. When we get to the urban areas, there's a lot of lack of planning in terms of protection and understanding of aquifers and making sure that master plans recognize these aquifers. This is reflected by the fact that, for example, we locate our metro stations or we locate basement parkings, 3-4 stories in very rich shallow aquifer zones and actually pump out the precious water, throw it into stormwater drains, put concrete walls, and then make sure that the aquifer is permanently damaged and that we don't take care of the waters that are so precious for us. So as our knowledge and understanding develops, our master plans not only have to recognize surface water flows, which we also do badly, in terms of the hydrology of drains, in terms of the wetlands, in terms of the connections between the tanks and wetlands, but also the aquifer waters. It is not that if we do things below the ground that we're not damaging water, and therefore understanding shallow aquifers and protecting them should become one of the ways that we manage water in our urban areas. And we can link it with urban flooding by making sure that we pick the rainwater and push it into the aquifer rather than allowing it to waterlog or flood our areas. So both master plans and building bylaws have to talk to wells. The wells themselves have a mixed history in terms of water supply. For example, in Bangalore, it was the tanks and wells which were providing water to a city of 1.5 lakh population. But when a continuous 3-year drought occurred, it was followed by famine. The tanks and wells dried up. More than 1 lakh people died. And so therefore, wells in themselves are not alone to provide water security and resilience. They're just a supplement, which is what we should realize, because the urban demand for water is now 135 liters per capita per day. And there's also an economic demand for water, which perhaps shallow aquifers and groundwater cannot in themselves provide, but there'll be an important supplement to the waters. And therefore, we'll have to co-jointly develop surface water sources with our shallow aquifers. So that history led us to the development of surface water sources in Bangalore. So from 1894 to 96, we first pushed the pipe water supply using steam engines to our city. So therefore, we forgot the wells in Bangalore the moment this pipe water supply came in. Not only if we forgot the wells, we forgot our lakes also, because the lakes and wells were no longer sources of water for us. So pipe water supply had this damaging impact of destroying local water sources. And we should realize that and now make sure that we work together. This is a classic photograph by Raghu Rai, India's most famous sun photographer. This is Agrasen Ki Bawdi in Delhi. You see the young lads in the water there. Notice the water table level. Notice the high-rise buildings coming at the top. And notice the structure now. So the skeleton remains, the soul is gone. We have retained the architectural heritage, but somehow we never seem to ask what happened to the waters and can we bring back the waters? And truly will the heritage be retained when the waters also come back, right? So that's something that we have to ponder over and reflect, because this reflects what's happening to urban aquifers, this particular stark two images. Interesting fact around wells in Delhi itself, there is Gurudwara Bangla Sahib, which is very close to Connaught Place, a very holy place. In the early 1900s, there was a cholera epidemic in Delhi. Many people died. But those who drank water from the wells of the Gurudwara did not get cholera. Two reasons, scientific reasons. One, the well was itself in a large protected area, so there was no open defecation or contamination with sewage to those wells. Two, volunteers from the Gurudwara provided the water in clean ladles, right? So there was no contact with the well water, and that water came to us. So the well located in a holy place, saving us from a modern disease like cholera, it's a very interesting twist for us to remember. However, when you go to the same Gurudwara Bangla Sahib now, you find that there are RO plants which are treating the water and then filling the sarovar. The wells themselves, remain a memory. So the lifesaver, which is also spiritually recognized, also is now destroyed in our urbanization and modernization efforts, which we have to remember. Because we carry a legacy and a history, the world's deepest step well Mansee was asking what is the difference between a well and a step well. A step well is when you step down to get the waters or collect the waters, like this beautiful steps that you see here. In an open well, you draw waters. And in a bore well, you usually use a pump to pump the waters out. So it's the method of extracting water or accessing water which determines the nomenclature for the wells. Look at this beautiful geography, because then it reached its apogee in terms of the step wells in Gujarat and Rajasthan especially, and in some parts of Madhya Pradesh, where architectural expressions found themselves around water, and these became social cultural spaces and spaces of manifesting the work of stone and the work of design that we had. The wells themselves also had a very interesting role in technology, and here's a hypothesis for you on a Wednesday evening. Human beings, as the archaeologist in Kilidi was mentioning, are generally lazy. They try to minimize their mechanical efforts. So perhaps a rope was used to haul the water from the well. A rope was developed. Then a stick was used to hang the rope on and then pull the water, and the stick became the pulley. And the pulley gave us mechanical advantage to lift water so that even little girls could start to lift waters, right? And then here's my hypothesis. The pulley itself became the wheel and got attached to the bullock cart, therefore became modes of transportation, got attached to the horse cart and became weapons of war, the tanks of old days, and then got attached to the modern automobile, causing all the traffic jams that we face in our cities now. So one of the reasons why we have traffic jams in our city is bad planning, traffic and transport planning. But the second reason is perhaps the development of the pulley around a well, which caused the wheel to be developed and therefore the traffic jams to occur. Surprisingly, the only civilization which did not develop the wheel culturally, because the wheel developed across many civilizations, was the civilization in Australia, which is one of the oldest civilizations, continuous civilizations in the world, 60,000 years old, 65,000 years old, but they did not develop the wheel there. And one of the reasons seems to be because they did not also feel the necessity for a well there. And so therefore the well and the wheel seem to be linked technologically in some sense, cause for scientists, for researchers to pursue as MPhil or PhD, whatever. This is just a hypothesis. No, I'm not doing it. So like I was telling you, the gender specificity of water perhaps also emerged around the fact that technology developed in a certain fashion, which made it possible for women and girl childs to lift the water, and therefore the responsibility became theirs. And then as we invented technology, we went on to the Persian wheel. Somewhere around Rajasthan and Sindh, bullocks were tamed, gear systems were developed, the aragatta, the rope pot, became the Persian wheel, and you started to lift water from 50 to 60 feet, capable of irrigating up to 2 hectares of water. The first pumps of India, of the world, developed perhaps in India. So though it's called the Persian wheel, perhaps more apt to call it the Indian wheel. So technology develops around the well. And in the 60s, there was again a period of drought and famine and a war with Pakistan, and the Green Revolution began. The famine and the drought caused food scarcities and shortages, as was described by the people then, though it's also a matter of debate. And so not only did we bring the high-yielding variety of wheat from Mexico, but we bought UNICEF brought these hard rock drilling rigs from Denmark, USA, and UK, and they started to blast through rock and provide water for our people, and they were saviors at that particular point of time. So the hard rock came in the mid-60s, the hard rock drilling rig came in the mid-60s. In typical Indian jugaad fashion, we started to make the hard rock drilling rigs ourselves in Tiruchendur, in Tamil Nadu, which is the mecca of hard rock drilling rigs, and we can now drill to 2,000 feet and beyond for water. Right? So therefore, what came for domestic water supply also slipped into irrigation and started competition between irrigation and drinking water sources in the same village itself, thanks to the use of technology. And not only did the hard rock drilling rig go deep into waters, but it made the groundwaters invisible. Now there's a camera going into a hard rock well. This is at about 400 to 450 feet deep. It's a 4.5-inch drill that has gone through, and water is coming in through cracks and fissures. Imagine 33 million wells and bore wells, 33 million bore wells, many of them in hard rock areas, with people thinking that the water there is in streams or in rivers or in a pool. Whereas it's actually cracks and fissures like this, which brings water to the well, and we are pumping out 250 cubic kilometers. The sheer invisibility of groundwater has been caused through the hard rock drilling rig. And as we understand, we also start to develop aquifers, and we start to categorize them as crystalline aquifers, alluvial aquifers, and so on and so forth. And through the Atal Bhujal Yojana, we are now doing a very detailed mapping of sub-aquifers. Hopefully that will give us much more data, granular data for us to manage our aquifers a lot better. And this is a map from Aquadam, which tells us that almost all of India is either quantity affected or quality affected. So in combination of quality and quantity, we are very, very sensitive. Fluoride, arsenic, iron, now uranium in some places are all now starting to come through bore wells and groundwater in aquifers, right? So we have to deal with it. And so again, if I step back, the project of surface water started with the British East India Company through the first Ganga Canal and the Yamuna Canal in the 1830s, 1840s. So the first College of Engineering in Roorkee started to train our engineers in canal building. Canal building was the great endeavor of the East India Company. Sir Arthur Cotton is a great name there, and these two great names came with canal irrigation supply. But canal irrigation was taken up as a financial project. It was giving us 6 to 7% return on investment to the British East India Company. But farmers were very reluctant to move away from the open wells they had to the canal waters. Their argument was, we can extract our well waters when we need, but for the canal irrigation system, not only do we have to pay for the waters, but we have also to depend on somebody to lift the sluice gates and shutter gates, and therefore there was a reluctance. And the district magistrates at those times, the collectors, actually forced the closure of many wells for persuading people to go to canal waters. That's a history that we have with the surface water challenge. On the other hand, the wells themselves were responsible for the guinea worm. 3 things we have eradicated in India. One of them is polio, the other is smallpox, the third was the guinea worm. And the guinea worm spread to people through the step wells. You know, if when people walked into the waters with a cut or wound in their feet, then the guinea worm would go in and then it would mature in the body and emerge from the eye, from the hand. It was a very debilitating exercise. The guinea worm was eliminated thanks to the Mark II hand pump, which was invented in India, developed in India, and which gave us safe drinking water from the ground. So the wells have advantages, but also have disadvantages, which we must recognize. So when we start to revive the shallow aquifer, the open wells, we have to think about an entire ecosystem revival. It cannot be the well itself that can be revived. So for example, the tank ecosystem of South India, where surface waters are collected and impounded using an earthen bund, can hold on to the waters. And as you see in the picture on the right, it can recharge the aquifers and make sure that the water is available in the well much after the tank has dried. So here's how a tank is constructed. As you know, the history is more than 1,200 years old for these tanks, maybe 2,000 years old. You throw an earthen dam across a valley and hold on to the waters. You line the earthen dam with stones so that it doesn't get destroyed. And then the waters are held on, and then it's allowed to overflow through a wasteware. The waters themselves can be used directly. There are people who are associated with the waters, like the Nirugantis, traditional people responsible for the distribution of waters, and festivals around these tanks. And in the downstream area of the tank is the command area, or what's called the Achkat, which is directly fed by sluice channels from the tank itself, and irrigation is practiced in the Achkat. Paddy is typically grown when the tanks are full, and as you see, it's women who are working on it, and you have lush green landscapes even in semi-arid areas with rice like that, and when the paddy ripens, it's a glorious feature. But what the tank also does, and the command also does, and what paddy cultivation also does, is both from the tank and in the command area, the groundwater is recharged and the aquifers are full. So once the paddy harvest is done, the waters are still available in the aquifers for further use by animals, by people for domestic consumption, as you can see. And even these wells are embellished, not as great as the step wells, but you can see farmers doing a good deal of stonework if they could afford it to make it a beautiful artifact, right? And then it provides drinking water security. So this well next to the tank here is a major source of water by the women households of the village, though they have taps in their homes, because they believe that this water is sweet. And even in the driest of drought years, the well does not dry up. Even in continuous 3-year rainfall failure, the well continues to provide water. So as a backup to the Jal Jeevan mission, perhaps we'll have to reimagine the tanks and the wells together so that resilience is built for climate change and drinking water security is assured in case of the pipe system failing, right? So that's how it goes. And then we also have to think about cattle and animals and the pastoral community, because they also need water, and many of them now access water through wells to provide drinking water to their sheep and goats and cows and buffaloes, as you see there. That's at a sort of a systemic level. So we'll have to look at the whole tank ecosystem to rejuvenate the shallow aquifer and the wells. There are smaller efforts which are possible, however, through percolation ponds like this, where you hold on to the water and allow it to recharge, which means that the village well is full, right? So if you understand the aquifer, you understand the recharge zones, the discharge zones, make sure that you make recharge structures in the recharge zones to infiltrate into the ground, then it is rewarded by the discharge zone wells having full water. Like, for example, this well, which did not see so much water for 100 years because we had not practiced the art of recharge, right? However, at the same place where the well is and the well is full of water, you see on the left, from a bore well, water is being pumped into the cistern and it's overflowing, being wasted. Now, two conundrums. One, that is free water by the government, which is overflowing and getting wasted. Here is precious water in the well, which you cannot waste because you have to haul the water out. So is the pump one of the cause for the loss of water, and does it impact water conservation? How do we handle a mechanical device or an electrical device like a pump is a challenge for us in a systemic view. Also, when wells are given up as memory, this is what we do. We throw garbage into it, Hawaii chappals or kurkure. In the modern version, you chuck kurkure. How is it that an artifact which gives us water for 5,000 years is treated in this matter? Is something for cultural researchers to think about and figure out why. Then again, small groups like Mekpan Abhiyan, my friend Eklavya Prasad is a part of it, and there are other people in Bihar, work with the community to make sure that those kind of wells which are contaminated are cleaned by the people themselves. Because this is simple technology to clean up. You just need people to go down, make sure that the silt is clean. Then you put in a bit of alum, potassium permanganate, or even bleaching powder to disinfect the waters, and your well is back in business. Around wells are people from the community called the Manwaddars, who have been digging wells for 2,000 years or more. They're also called the Ode community. Their skills are now threatened because the borewell has come and nobody digs open wells. We are trying to work with them in the city of Bangalore to dig recharge wells, to put water from the rooftops and stormwater drains into the ground so that their livelihood is protected and the city gets water security as well as water logging security. Can prevent water logging if we recharge wells. So this is some of the works that the Manwaddars have done. Rooftop rainwater is picked in filters and pushed into the well there. And the well then provides water for Mr. Bal Subramaniam and his granddaughter throughout the year. This is a small effort at a household level, right? And then at a community level, when a community like Rainbow Drive with about 360 sites works on water, what it does is it bans private bore wells. It mandates recharge wells. So 360 recharge wells putting water into the ground, 3 bore wells drawing water out, put a meter there, put a cap on 20,000 liters, saying no more than 20,000 liters per household per month. And then you have a water balance, which makes sure that the system is water surplus. Right? The wastewater is also collected, treated, and pushed back. So the well functions as an artifact of recharge here in this particular area. The borewell is the draw, and wastewater is recirculated, but metering and tariff play an important role for demand management and for conservation of water. And beautiful artifacts in our city, Cubbon Park, heart of the city, where the Karga festival, which is more than a 500-year-old festival, makes a pit stop at one of the wells. The one on the left, it's called the Karga the Bhavi. And then there's an oblation offered to the well before things are going forward. We brought it back to functional use with the help of the well diggers. And it's now not only symbolic in terms of the Karga stopping there, but also functional in providing water to the park, right? So that's a great endeavor. Belgaum city has revived all its open wells, 84 or 85 of them, integrated it with the city water supply schemes like this beautiful well here. They put in decentralized wastewater treatment systems like a rapid sand filter, online fluorimeter, supporting the community. The only thing the community has to do is to make sure that they don't throw Ganesha idols into it or flowers into it. They keep the well clean because they're going to get the drinking water. So these kind of compacts about a clean well, community getting water, community taking responsibility for the cleanliness of water is something that we need to work on from neighborhood to neighborhood, village to village. And then, of course, modern technology is there to clean the water up depending on the quality of the well water. So that's there. The final point that I want to make is an interesting combination of treated wastewater now rejuvenating wells. Treated wastewater is available in plenty in our cities. We have millions of liters of them, perhaps 90,000 million liters per day is being generated in India. This is the sewage treatment plants in Bangalore, more than 33 of them, treating close to 1,400 million liters of water. This is a sewage treatment plant, a decentralized one of the 33, treating roughly about 400 billion liters per day in the combination of these wastewater treatment plants, right? So the inlet water is measured for its quality, and then it's treated to the quality standards set out by the CPCB right now, right, which is BOD less than 10. And then once it meets those standards, it's pumped 100 kilometers to fill roughly 137 lakes now, but it will fill 500 lakes in the drought-affected districts of Kolar and Chikballapur. All these lakes or tanks, as they are called, is an ecosystem which cascades and fills up on its own. They're all being filled by the city's treated wastewater. And a lot of these tanks are now being rejuvenated. So what is happening is that ecological diversity is returning, biodiversity is returning. This is how the treated wastewater enters the tank. This is how the first tank looks like. So there's fishing activity here, and the fish are bioindicators of the water quality. And in turn, the farmers are not allowed to draw water directly. It's only through managed aquifer recharge. They fill up wells, and these old wells have come back to life. As you can see, the water table there, in a very drought-prone district where groundwater tables have collapsed to 1,500 feet, you have wells with water, and farmers now have water security. They use drip irrigation from these wells to grow crops like cucumber, as you can see here. In turn, what has happened is that the farmers have got livelihood security. In turn, the city has got food security. And the well is the intermediary here, providing very low energy water through drip irrigation systems for the farmer to cultivate, right? So these are the kind of compacts now which cities can draw with the hinterland, which is climate change affected, using wastewater, improving wastewater treatment quality as much as possible, because the food security of the city is also linked to it, and then using the aquifer or managed aquifer recharge and the wells as an intermediary to provide water for the farmers. Not only is the treated wastewater filling lakes in rural areas, but in small towns like Chikballapur, which is a population of 2.5 lakh, there's a huge lake close to the town of Chikballapur, which is now filled with treated wastewater, as you can see. And the recharge rate from these large lakes is about 13.35 million liters per day, at 10 liters per square meter per day. That's the kind of recharge rates that are observed here for tanks. And it can be as high as 20 liters per square meter per day when the tank is freshly desilted, which means that the wells in the city have all now got water. The groundwater table has come up, and therefore personal access to water has now been ensured through managed aquifer recharge and the earth acting as a filter. So these public wells are also being full of water. They're being sought to be revived so that they enter into the city's water supply distribution system, as you can see. So the compact is not only with rainwater being harvested and recharged, lakes being rejuvenated and recharging the shallow aquifer, but also treated wastewater acting as a source for recharge and for daily. So we are now in an endeavor to map the wells in our city, to figure out what the shallow aquifer is, and to get into a compact with citizens saying that if you have a well, please protect it, please desilt it, please recharge it. Tell your neighbor to dig a well, and therefore spread 1 million wells across Bangalore to give the city water security. The last slide that I want to leave you with is that one of the joys of rural India, the swimming pools of rural India, have been wells. In summertime, summer holidays, take off to the well. An elder is supervising you, tie a log behind you, jump into the waters, learn the fine art of swimming. If our groundwater tables collapse, if our wells collapse, we will have a generation of youngsters, both boys and girls, who will not experience the joy of swimming and of water itself. So the well is not only functional in terms of the water supply that it gives, but it's also enjoying what nature gives us, provides us, provided we take care of it in a careful manner. Thank you for your patience and listening, and the slides will be there with you. The slide presentation is there, and of course the video will be there for you when you want to see it. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Vishwanath. Thanks so much for enlightening us and also taking us through the journey of, life of well, and importantly, linking the relationship of well towards the end with lakes, which also helps me to understand, and we have many youngsters sitting here today, and other aspects where you are taking us through the civilization, how wells were there, and it's a very good note to end that it is also a public space, and it is something which we have to cherish as we also see other waterfronts being treated. And so if we want to save wells, this aspect becomes very important to convince the community that why wells are required, and not only for the technical and livelihood and living reasons, but it is also social space. With these words, I will open the floor for people to ask questions. I also noticed that Barbara Vankoppan is here. So maybe we can request her and give her the honor to open questions or any queries or suggestions, anything she would like to add. Barbara, since you are here, I will be also keen to request you for some session of your lecture with us. Over to you, Barbara.
Oh, hi, everybody. I was just very interested in the rich analysis and working a lot in Africa. I think we can learn so much. That was really the main I don't have questions. I just feel thanks a lot, and we have a lot to learn in Africa on this. I'm learning new things each time. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Look forward to also hearing you sometime in Wednesdays for Water. May I invite people to really ask questions or suggestions, or if you have any new information to add here, the floor is yours, and Vishwanath is very keen to take your questions. There are some things in the chat box, but I think it's good to ask a question now when it's more, physical. We give some
Mansee,
time. Yes, go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Vishwanathji, Pranam and Namaste. I just want to ask about the wells have become a good solution in Bihar. See, some places they have got rain harvested in wells, and they found they are pure water in the wells water, and whereas in the groundwater they have got affectation of arsenic and fluorides and others. So wells have come as a blessing in those times. Another thing is there has to be proper awareness in rural area. Most of the time, the old wells which has been working for so many years and centuries, they have become totally defunct, and they are not maintained well, and they are totally filled up with solid waste and other dirt. So that is bad thing. That's very, very bad. So they should always use that for rainwater harvesting. And one more thing I would like to say, wells are a great cultural connect. I've seen a couple of synonymous wells in Rajasthan and other areas. You will not believe people walking miles. They get direction from by going and approaching wells. The directions, north, east, west, south is duly marked in the well. The other distances are marked, and so many cultural add-ons you get from the well. So wells are actually a good communication for communities. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. So.
Thank you, Vishwanath. I think excellent, piece of knowledge. A lot of learning. I always used to think that civilizations grow around rivers because they are dependent on the rivers. But today, actually, you opened my eyes to a lot of wells when it came to Harappan or Indus Valley civilization. In fact, I know while growing up, my mother is from Bundelkhand area, and whenever I used to visit there, I used to find, of course, we were dependent on the wells completely for water. And I had no concept of aquifer as a small child, but that much I knew that khara pani and meetha pani was something that people would talk about. So meetha pani was for drinking and khara pani was for other uses. But interestingly, there was a temple there, and there was a talab, Rayanpur ka talab, which was called, that had a well in between. So, and that would probably help in keeping water throughout the year in that lake. So that's an interesting experience I thought I can share. The other thing that my father is from the other side, he's from Bihar, he's from North Bihar, Saharsa. And again, we were totally dependent on wells. So every summer when we used to go there, wells wouldn't dry up at all. But now when I go to the field, as you rightly showed, I think those pictures with chappals and those packets, probably they have become representative of our wells completely. But on that, I have a question to you around the government's very ambitious program that's going on for the last 3 years on Catch the Rain. So how is it that we can really look at aligning these initiatives? So a lot of people are doing a large number of work, but how can we really align ourselves to the government initiatives and see that probably there are some success metrics that we have, some baseline, some success metrics that we can showcase that in terms of, how effective these programs are, and at the same time, how communities can be brought on board.
Yeah, so Mr. Ashok Kumar was leading the Catch the Rain program at that particular time. He's also been very vocal in looking at wells and the shallow aquifer revival also, right? And there are many groups who are now really doing some excellent work. For example, in Hyderabad, there's a group which is called the Kalpana Ramesh is leading it, and they're reviving many wells there. Rohan Kale, a youngster from Bombay, he's launched a movement. Well, all across Maharashtra, youngsters are looking at the wells and the step wells in their village, and they themselves are voluntarily cleaning it up and making sure. The next step will, of course, make sure that they could be recharged so that water comes there. Make Pain Abhiyan in Bihar has been doing fantastic work. Eklavya Prasad, who's looking at Saharsa, in fact, is one of the districts where they're looking at rainwater harvesting and recharge and reviving the old open well. What we need is a lot more conversations, right? What I figure out is that it's not going to be a one-person charge. It's going to be a community which is realized, which sees this as a resource, and then which acts to make sure that the resource is protected and used wisely. Now, that's a different skill set from a water skill set, right? A community engagement and a community conversation is a skill set which hydrogeologists generally don't have. I'm an engineer myself. I know that we're not great conversationalists. So we'll have to begin this national conversation around wells. And wherever I've gone, what I've found, unfortunately, is that we've lost the memory of the well in 40 years, we've lost a memory of 5,000 years, right? So, and people don't believe it at all. When we go to places, when our well diggers go and want to dig a well, "Arey, yahan kahan pani milega? Yahan to 1,000 feet tak borewell mein pani nahi hai." Whereas we found water at 20 feet. In many places, there is no hydrogeological connectivity between the shallow aquifer and the deep aquifer. We somehow presume that in all places, if you drill a borewell, the open well water will disappear, right? So we have to revisit that conversation. We found that when people have cleaned up the well, just yesterday, the well diggers cleaned up a well in a village which had sweet water. The well, which was Meetha Pani, and people knew it, and the villagers knew it, and they called it the Meetha Pani well because the others were Khara Pani well. And so when the well diggers wanted to clean up the well, they said, clean this one up. And so when they cleaned it up, now there's enough and more water in the cattle trough for close to 50 cows, goats and sheep, not to mention people, for them to drink, right? So people will join the movement, provided they're shown examples and provided there's a conversation around it. And we have to build those conversations, a lot of those conversations. Bundelkhand is such a rich area in terms of well, and it's such a water scarce area. Yes. And it's a rich area in terms of tanks. You know, the tanks of Bundelkhand are brilliant constructs, and the tanks work when the wells work. They both tie together symbiotically. Right? Saharsa would be an area affected with fluoride, whereas the well would not have fluoride water. So how do we take this knowledge and make it a people's movement, which Catch the Rain wanted to do in a certain sense? We have to deepen that engagement and conversation and take it forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishwanath. I think that's, yeah.
Yes, Fawzia.
I was just saying that, yes, that's exactly what we need to build synergies, talk more about it, get people to understand the culture, that cultural life around wells also. Because now when you were speaking and I was trying to think of 70s and all, when I used to visit these places, we would look forward to actually, even going and pulling out water from the well. So from cities, when we used to go there, it was fun to pull out water from there and then use it, rather than even looking out for some tap. There were no taps. Literally, there were no taps. There were either hand pumps or we had these wells. So these were the two things that we had. So thank you. I think, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to mention the point that you were mentioning, that there's a skill in getting that pot or the bucket into the waters. It won't go in easily. My friend Eklavya always mentions the way it was done in the wells is something called pani todana, breaking water, as you would call it, right?
Correct.
And that was done as a method of oxidizing the water too. So therefore, it was oxygenation of the water in a crude form with a bucket, and then also get the bucket inside it. And so what has then happened is that you had these kind of a lot of the pots inside the well. So therefore, to lift it out, you had something called a patal bhairavi. This was a lot of hooks tied to a rope, which would then be lowered into the well to lift out all those artifacts. And my well diggers also get me coins, from Persian coins from the British days, now in these wells there, because we always had this habit of throwing coins into the well as good luck, right? And as a spiritual thing, which gives us a lot of archaeological history of the well too. So many interesting facets around them.
Absolutely. I think, and this is another new thing that you told me, not that I didn't notice that splash happening in the water and the bucket going inside and pani todna, but that probably helped in aeration also.
Yes,
that is something again that probably is a learning for me, even after working in the field of water for almost about 15 years. So thank you very much. And I think I'll pass it on to others for questions.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
Amanda has
for-
asked me a question, Mansee. Amanda has
Yes.
put it and she's
Yes.
lost her voice. So she's
Yes, I saw
asking
that in
what,
the chat box.
yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, what happens in the Sarjapur area? How do we protect it? It's a tough job, Amanda. There's no easy answer for it. So we have to have a lot of conversations with the Gram Panchayat, with the agricultural community there, with the fisher community there, with those who have some connect with the tanks and lakes which remain there, and try and see whether they find an interest or a stake in protecting these water sources. Unfortunately, real estate values will drive their decision making rather than water values because they want to sell the land at a very high price. How do we then make sure that some of these natural resources are protected so that the value of land itself, even in its urban form, is enhanced, is a challenge for us, which works on a master plan level, but also at a community engagement level with the Gram Panchayats. It's a long haul.
Yeah, very interesting. And I will pick the point from where you were talking about a national conversation is required and stress upon the very idea what we have been doing in Wednesdays for Water is actually bring the science of water in a very simple language as you try to explain to us like lay persons, I will say, as water enthusiasts, what we can learn from and then at least fall in love with the idea of conserving water, you know. And you rightly mentioned that actually it is not everybody's cup of tea to do all these things, but at least if the conversation goes on, there is enough knowledge and wisdom around in the local area where if we talk about it, that we have to conserve it, people will find ways to do it. It's more about having this conversation going. There's one more point made in the chat box I see from Tejendra. I think Tejendra, it will be good idea if you speak it out. You are bringing us to Gujarat from Amanda's point. Yes, Amanda, do you want to speak? Do you have a voice or I will let Tejendra do the talking? I see
yes,
you
ma'am.
have written something. Yeah, Tejendra, go ahead.
In Gujarat, I have researched on that one particular town, Idar. The spiritual heritage is linking with the step well in the past time, older time. Even they provide a step well for the animal drinking water, not for the human, but is called the Havada for the drinking water for the animals. Can I suggest that in India, people and the banyan tree for the spiritual landmark for the can we try the spiritual heritage as a step well, so maintain the older step wells as well as particularly in Gujarat every village have a step well, but now step well को destroy कर रहा है और borewell बना रहा है, particular main issue concerning, so that can I possibly is
नहीं करना पड़ेगा वहां पे एक
yes.
बढ़िया संस्था है, अतुल्य वर्षों करके एक छोटा सा ग्रुप बना है, बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं। और गुजरात में ही कच्छ में एक्ट नाम की एक संस्था है, योगेंद्र भाई जडेजा जो काम करते हैं वहां पे, वो भी बहुत सारा काम कर रहे हैं पानी के साथ और स्टेपवेल के साथ। तो जैसे आप बता रहे थे, समाज को जुड़ना पड़ेगा इसके साथ, और यदि हम स्पिरिचुअल मीन्स को ले, पैनियन ट्री को ले और उसको वहां पे रखे और समाज को एकत्रित करें कि वो उसे बचा के रखें वो स्टेपवेल को, तो बहुत अच्छा काम होगा। लेकिन गुजरात का सबसे बड़ा ये चैलेंज होगा कि वो स्टेपवेल में पानी कैसे आए। स्टेपवेल को तो हम बचा लेंगे, पानी वापस लाना बड़ा मुश्किल काम होगा, पर उस पर ध्यान देना पड़ेगा और उस पर काम करना पड़ेगा। वो उसके लिए थोड़ा लंबा सफर होगा, लेकिन यदि हम अभी मन बना के करने लगे तो शायद हमें कुछ इलाकों में सक्सेस मिलेगा, इन्हें सफलता भी मिलेगा।
Very good point. I think you also made this point earlier as well in your presentation that हमने उसका architecture तो आज हम बचा पा रहे हैं as an artifact, but rightly mentioned for Idar, and Tejendra himself has gone and walked into the stepwells and cleaned some of the stepwells, just that you know, as a student, and did some movements also. So yes, there has to be more, people engagement, and that will only start with conversation about it, and people will find their own ways locally. I think we don't need experts to go there and do something unless and until they're inviting us. But if we can instigate a talking amongst them, they will find out, and they may, if required, they may always get people like Vishwanath, who have been doing it there. So we move on to our next question. We have two hands raised. Ramesh Chandra Rasiklal, please unmute yourself and ask your question. आप कोई भी लैंग्वेज और भी यूज कर सकते हैं. आई थिंक अगर कन्नड़ भी बोलना हो या तेलुगु, आई डोंट नो. We are open for all language as long as speakers can speak that language.
Hi everybody. I am Ramesh Patel from Patan, Gujarat.
Yes.
I think for recharge of water through traditional ponds, each government should be praised or conveyed from our side the message to redevelop the traditional ponds which are developed by in Gujarat all kings of past like Siddharaj and king of Bhavnagar, Saurashtra. Nowadays, I think I have written 3-4 times a book on recharge rainwater, but I think that the cheapest way and the maximum input of the water is through the redevelop the traditional ponds. It is the cheapest. And what is the opinion of today's speaker? That I want to know. Thank you.
I agree with you 120%. That's the short answer for you, Ramesh Chandra ji. बिल्कुल, आप तो पाटन से हैं, रानी की वाव है वहाँ पे, कितने सारे वाव है, तो हर गांव में एक वाव है, 2-3 वाव है, और बिल्कुल सही बोला आपने, and you said it absolutely right, that if we revive those old traditional tanks and ponds, that will be the best way to recharge our shallow aquifers in many cases, in many places.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. મારા કઈ બે પૂછ્યું તો જવાબ સારામાં આપ્યો કે તમારા રાણીની વાવ નજીકમાં નજીક છે. I am very close to Rani ki Vav. Hardly 500 meter, 500, and probably Rani ki Vav is the oldest rainwater structure in India.
Yes, it is amongst
it is the uptake for river Saraswati. We want to survive river basins, and we want to survive river, but it is the oldest recharge structure through which it comes to Sahasraling Talab, and then it comes to Rani ki Vav. That is a good point. Now we should revive and suppress each government, not only Gujarat, each government, because it is the cheapest way to recharge. And by that way, it will be a widespread recharge.
जी, रमेश चंद्र जी अपना एड्रेस भी डाल दीजिए, क्योंकि अहमदाबाद में कोई भी आता है तो रानी का वाव उसको मैं जरूर ले जाती हूँ दिखाने, तो मैं आपको जरूर आऊंगी मिलने.
This is my permit.
हाँ, मानसी जी, मैं बता रहा था, रमेश चंद्र जी, फाफड़ा तैयार रखिएगा और चाय गरम रखिएगा, आ जाएंगे.
बिल्कुल.
Not only tea. Along with that, I will show you the dinosaur park, which is last month. Yes, it was inaugurated by CM, and it is also based on being geologist. I will also be able to explain you the why dinosaurs extended from the world.
Yes, absolutely. It's a water crisis.
Not only tea, I will show you that also.
ओके, तो हमारा चाय, फाफड़ा और डायनासोर पार्क तो तय रहा. मेरे अगले कोई भी विजिटर आते हैं अहमदाबाद, तो आप तैयार रहिए. आप अपना एड्रेस, फोन नंबर प्लीज इसमें डाल दीजिए चैट बॉक्स में. We move on to Shobit. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste, sir. I am from Uttarakhand. सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि जैसे एंशिएंट टाइम में हमारे जो लोग थे वो बड़े बड़े तालाब और बड़ी बड़ी लेक्स बनवाते थे.
ચા ફાફડા તૈયાર રાખજો, અમે આવીશું. તમે જે સજેસ્ટ કર્યું સારામાં સારું છે કે
रमेश जी, आप अपने आप को म्यूट कर लीजिए प्लीज. हम लोग चाय फाफड़े में नहीं, तो हम लोग अभी ऑलरेडी हम लोग स्लर्प हो रहे हैं.
बड़ी बड़ी लेक्स बनवाते थे शहरों में या जो सिटी होती थी, लेकिन आज उनका जो, अगर मैं कहूँ, आज उनका जो एक तरह से उन्हें रिप्लेस कर दिया है, वो बड़े बड़े एसटीपीज और ईटीपीज ने उनको रिप्लेस कर दिया है. तो हम देख रहे हैं कि समय के साथ साथ जो लैंड है, शहरों की जो लैंड है, लैंड पार्सल्स हैं, उनकी जो कीमत है वो बढ़ती जा रही है, और जो कंस्ट्रक्शन है वो वर्टिकली जा रहा है, ना कि हॉरिजॉन्टली जा रहा है. तो ऐसे में ये एसटीपी भविष्य के हिसाब से हमारे जो वाटर सिक्योरिटी है उसके लिए लायबिलिटी साबित होंगे या एसेट साबित होंगे, और इनका जो रिप्लेसमेंट हो सकता है भविष्य की टेक्नोलॉजी के हिसाब से, क्या उसमें इतना इनोवेशन हो पा रहा है कि बाद में हम जिस स्केल पे ये एसटीपीज रोज बनाए जा रहे हैं हमारी जो वेस्ट वाटर है उसको ट्रीट करने के लिए, उसकी जगह पे हम लेक या किसी तरह का कोई ओपन वेल या इस तरह के जो हमारे रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है उसको क्रिएट कर सके और हमारी जो शहरों की वाटर सिक्योरिटी है उसको इंश्योर कर पाए। धन्यवाद सर।
दोनों चीजों पर ध्यान देना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि एक तो शहरों में सुएज की मात्रा बहुत बढ़ रही है। जैसे हम नगरीकरण बढ़ता जा रहा है, जैसे जनसंख्या बढ़ती जा रही है, तो सुएज की भी मात्रा बढ़ती जा रही है ना। तो हमें सुएज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट्स तो जरूर बनाना पड़ेगा। किस किस्म का बनाना पड़ेगा उस पर हम चर्चा कर सकते हैं कि वो डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड बायोलॉजिकल बेस्ड सिस्टम्स होगा या सेंट्रलाइज्ड होगा, एनर्जी इनएफिशिएंट सिस्टम्स होगा, किस ढंग का होना चाहिए उसको हम तय कर सकते हैं। किस टाइप का होगा, मेम्ब्रेन बेस्ड होगा, सीक्वेंशियल बैच रिएक्टर, ऐसे तरह तरह के जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उस पर हमें ध्यान देना पड़ेगा। और हमें ये तो जरूर करना पड़ेगा कि हर बूंद सुएज को हम इकट्ठा करें, ट्रीट करें, और ट्रीट करने के बाद ही उसे हम परिसर में छोड़ें, एनवायरमेंट में छोड़ें। पर उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि खाली हम एसटीपी और ईटीपी बनाते रहें, उसके साथ साथ हमें तालाबों को भी बचाना पड़ेगा, नदियों को भी बचाना पड़ेगा और रिचार्ज भी करना पड़ेगा। तो दोनों साथ साथ करेंगे तब जाके हमारा वाटर सिक्योरिटी बनेगा।
इसको विश्वनाथ जी ने जो कहा मैं उसको और एक्सटेंड कर दूं इंफॉर्मेशन के साथ। 22 जून और 29 जून को वी आर हैविंग पार्ट 1 एंड पार्ट 2 सेशंस ऑन वेस्ट वाटर। तो शायद ये मुद्दा और गहराई से इसको देखा जाएगा उस दोनों सेशंस में। So please join us on these sessions. And may I invite any other question last, maybe if there is any burning question or any suggestions?
I have one, Mansee.
Yes, go ahead, Ganesh. And we also wish Ganesh happy birthday. He is our core team member, and also it is his birthday, and it's a wonderful occasion to start our season 2. Ganesh, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Mansee. Thank you so much for that. Very wonderful presentation, Vishwanath sir. I don't know if you remember me, we met in the DVHR Center for Climate Change.
Right.
And that time also I was very inspired by questions that you asked during the conference. I work in the aspect of bringing transparency and clarity to water. As a liquid, water is transparent and clear, right? My belief is that if you make the data of water transparent and clear, you might be able to solve some significant amount of problems in water. So I wanted to understand, is there a role of data in managing the wells? Would that be of any help? If so, I would like to learn from you.
So Ganesh, here's my take on data. This is a bit controversial. I think in naivety, we pick data and we think that if we put it up in public domain, the more data that we collect, the more we put it in public domain, it will do good for us as a society. Not so. Data can only be, especially big data, can only be used by those who have the processing power or the knowledge power to be able to make sense of the data, or the ability to hire people like you to do the processing, to do the interpretation, and therefore make sense with data. Let me give you an example. When we put up data on an aquifer in a particular place, let's say a semi-arid place, and say that the water here is available in plenty, it's sweet water, the moment the data is in public domain, those who can afford to buy land, buy up that land on top, because water is such a scarce commodity. And what it does is it actually disrupts the existing community from its traditional occupations and livelihoods, and is then taken over by others, right? So for us, the big challenge is, how do we use data to empower local communities? How can data ethics and data privacy go hand in hand with agency to those who provide the data and those who need to benefit from the data the most? So what I would argue, Ganesh, is to create an architecture or a structure or a framework whereby those who provide data, those who supply data, let's say from villages around about shallow aquifers, will have first charge on the data, will only benefit from the data and not others.
Okay. Now there is a central groundwater authority regulation that all commercial and industrial facilities which are taking groundwater, so how do you see that?
So you know what happens in India is that regulations first come on paper and are very tight on paper, but its rolling out on the ground is linked with inefficiencies and all sorts of corruption issues also, right? So it's a good step, but not sufficient. What we need to do is to treat groundwater as a common pool resource. This is just the license permit Rajwala regulation, right? It's not looking at the asset to benefit the livelihoods of people. It's some form of control, and it's not going to really make a difference, too much of a difference. Whereas what we need to do is to treat it as a common pool resource and see how communities can take ownership and manage it. So Ganesh, if you have ideas on that with data, that will be great to do.
No, I also have this concern that if rich people have access to this data, they'll buy real estate based on availability of water, and this can affect the. So yeah, it has to be very carefully
That is exactly
managed.
what is happening.
Yeah, that's how, people ask me, because I say million wells, I'm putting a map, which I showed you there, a very badly granular map deliberately. They say, tell me which is the area. They'll hire me. Tell me what is your fees, consultancy, and I will tell me where the good groundwater is, and I want to buy that land.
Wow.
There is a big risk. All this. I just finished a chapter on water grabbing, and I was actually highlighting this point because now the land price is actually is attributed to the availability of water. So on one hand, we are talking about having data, which is very important to have data. But then how that data will be utilized is very, very important. And what is the level of its exploitation, and who is going to control that? Because the more we are building big data, we are actually handing it over to corporates, and people at the ground are losing control of their own information. And very simple example is our own privacy is completely lost now in all over the world. So when we talk about water and it's a shared resource, we have to be very, very concerned. And it's not that I think both Vishwanath and I believe in this, that it's not the data is not required, but then how the data will be utilized becomes the core of data management. But your work, Ganesh, is definitely worth exploring in the well section, because at least we can start talking about water monitoring and quality monitoring in the wells, because which is already monitored at certain criteria, which is already laid out by the Central Groundwater Board, if I'm not wrong. But we will take last question. Thank you, Ganesh.
I'll write to you, Vishwanath ji, and reach out to you independently.
You are in Bangalore together, so you can also meet up. Okay.
Thank you.
So Vishwanath, thank you for your patience. We take last question, and this will be really last question. Vasant Kumarji, please unmute yourself. And as you see, Vishwanath, we were already talking that it has to be highly interactive, and I think we are enjoying that interaction with you. Vasant Kumarji, sorry. Please go ahead.
Yes, madam. Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so sorry for asking the late question, and very happy that you are giving me a chance to interact. Actually, basically, I am nothing to do with this water. Actually, I am basically an electrical engineer. I was just checking this Cherry website. There, some of the events when I clicked, something like Wednesday Water. Wednesday Water, matlab, see, generally, like in some of the people to tempt, take for some Friday pizza, take one pizza, buy one, get one, like that. I just wanted to know, maybe this session will be like pani bachao, filter karo, acha se pani sehat banao. In that perspective, out of curiosity, I just logged in. And I was so happy that the way he started the event, it was really, especially, I'm basically from Bangalore, but recently moved to Andhra Pradesh, Puttaparthi. Some of the slides of Bangalore, when he was showing, really, it was giving me goosebumps. Like when we were small kids, one of our favorite destination was Hesarghatta Lake. My father used to take there. That is the place where very nice horological department, they have livestock. And that was something like a mini sea for us when we were kids. It was not a lake, but it was something like a beyond. Itna dur dekh raha to itna sea, so much lake, such a big lake. So unfortunately, later on, recently I visited, partially, only 25% of water is there. Only that middle structure is there. And as he's clearly told, this drinking water, maybe 3 decades earlier, we had a well near our house. That was the only well catering for the entire village, the clean water. And at that time, we never thought even of this RO plant or mineral water. That was the only water we used to bring out, bathe, cook food, and we were healthy. There was not at all in those days. And that was like a physical also. We have to go to the well, we have to pull it from the string. We used to help the mothers. In those days, we were never, then whenever some borewell is being put, means in those days something like a fair. Oh my God, दो बड़ा truck आएगा, एक रात में पूरा आवाज करेगा, एक और गाड़ी में. Like that, might recently when 1 year ago I moved to Puttaparthi actually here, I was really surprised. I wanted to highlight you. Almost every day in each and every neighboring plot, they are putting borewell. You mean to say of course, water is like a natural source. Everybody will get, but everybody want to grab it and secure it for themselves. What I mean to say, just 1 kilometer away, there is a very huge lake. Maybe that is the reason they are putting, and I don't see any wells here actually. And my question to you is like, there are so many renewable energy, Minister of Power, Minister of that, this and all that. Why something is not there for conservating, or why they are giving any subsidy or promoting or giving some emphasis for making a well? Because one term I learned in this session was recharge. Everything recharge, battery karo, mobile recharge karo. Today only something I learned. I was really tempted to tell about this recharging the well. It is something like wapas de do. Means wapas de do much again, it is give back to us. The way you are showing, no, it should be near the well, and it is so clear. There is no filter required, and my parents, my grandparents, they passed away very healthy. They were not having. But now in 40s itself, in spite of drinking Bisleri, still something cough, suffocation, that this will be there. So it has entirely changed actually. And moreover, I heard that Bangalore city, that Majestic bus stand was a huge lake. It's in those days. I never saw that, but they said this place there was a lake, but it has become a very big bus stand actually. And once in a while, even though actually I stay in a Gulf, actually Middle East country. I'm working there. I came for vacation. There they will not emphasize much on these wells because they depend only on the seawater. They will take it, desalinate, and they will pump and drink mineral water. But in Bangalore, there were so many lakes actually. Especially my house was in Doddabam Sandra. Nearby house, there was a big lake, and there was one Gokulani next to by MS Ramaya house. No, that was a huge lake in those days, but that lake itself is not there now. It has become a park now. Like that, so many are missing actually. Maybe after 10 decades, our kids will not even see. I have to show this was the lake in the picture, or I have to take away, like you showed no some Chikbalapur and Kolar. No, I have to take very far and show them these are the lakes. But I always feel that I never heard. Maybe it should be there. I am not aware. But is there any government body or who is like conservating natural sources, conservative animals, conservating lakes? I have heard, but conservation of this lake, these wells, who are emphasizing to take care or to restructure. I never heard about that. If something is there, please do share. I would love to know about that and participate in some community activities which will be helpful for everybody.
Vishwanath, you want to take some last points here?
No, so we have a central groundwater board which is responsible for groundwater. So there's nothing, there's no body or government institution for wells, right? Because it's part of the shallow aquifer and it's part of the drawl. The old days, we used to have a million well scheme where government would give loans to dig wells. Now they give loans to dig bore wells. Right? So unfortunately, it's very loosely regulated, if at all. And we'll have to conjointly create community awareness, individual awareness, as well as state awareness to make sure that we have a compact between all three of us, to Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar, as they call it, to make sure that we take care of our water resources, which includes aquifers and wells. Right? So we'll have to work on that. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishwanath, and thanks everybody for joining this session and encouraging us to start the season 2. We have already reserved speakers until July end, and we are already, requesting speakers for August. So if you know somebody who would like to speak on this platform, you are very much welcome to suggest us. But we are going strong with every week. Next week, we are having another big discussion, and I want to share this with you. And the discussion is on Ganga, reimagining. And the book has arrived to me last week, Reimagining, Rejuvenating, Reconnecting, a very new book by Rajiv Ranjan Mishra and Pushkal Upadhyay. Both of them are going to join us and do the book reading with us. And we are going to discuss through how Ganga is so close to our heart and how, and when did we start calling it Ma. So we are going very strong with each session, and I'm very thankful to all of you, and especially to my team. Once again, happy birthday to Ganesh, that we start this day with your birthday as well. So it's a digital party. And all the participants who have been here today and all the participants who joined us for last 1 year of 51 sessions, we want to thank you and to keep us motivated and also give us the courage to restart again this year. And last but not the least, Vishwanath, thank you so much that you agreed on a very first invitation. You said, yes, I'm in for it. We are really grateful and such a wonderful conversation. And I'm sure you also enjoyed the conversation with the participants. And as expected, we wanted to keep it easy and simple language, and you did it wonderfully. Thank you so much, Vishwanath, once again.